Shalom. Today, I'm going to throw the old Rabbi kippah on and begin with a little bit of Torah. Let's see if we can learn something about ourselves in 2025 by looking at ourselves thousands of years ago, shall we? 3 famous Bible stories. First, the Tower of Babel. When humankind, united by a single language, arrogantly tries to build a tower to heaven, God confuses their speech, creating many languages and scattering them across the world. Next, when the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah become consumed by wickedness, God destroys them with fire and brimstone. Yikes, God, sounds like a lot. Torah joke. And last, while Moses communes with God atop Mount Sinai, the Israelites grow fearful and impatient, and in a frenzy of revelry and idolatry, abandon their covenant to worship a golden calf, leading Moses to shatter the 10 Commandments in fury, burn the idol, and the Israelites face God's devastating judgment for their betrayal. 3 stories, each an example of collective moral failure, where humans, whether out of hubris, self-indulgence, cruelty, or fear, succumb to their lowest, most animalistic, most despicable instincts en masse, despite knowing full well that what they're doing is wrong. Why does the Torah include these stories? Obviously, as a warning, don't be like these weak and fallible human beings, but also as a mirror. We are these weak and fallible human beings, and at one point or another, we will be overtaken by emotions that lead us to abandon moral vigilance in favor of mob mentality that unleashes the very worst elements of our nature upon the world. Unfortunately, we see this indecency and immorality every day, as our society has normalized the expression of some of these abhorrent habits. We've got our own Tower of Babel, and it's called social media, a unifying language that provides every opportunity for frenzied cruelty to flourish like a virus if not kept in check, for Jews and non-Jews alike. One such appalling eruption of gross misconduct occurred this past week when Rabbi Angela Buchdahl of New York Central Synagogue, who appeared recently on this show for a wonderful conversation, declined to add her name to a letter entitled A Rabbinic Call to Action, Defending the Jewish Future, which calls out likely New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani as contributing to, quote, a culture that treats Jewish self-determination as a negotiable ideal or Jewish inclusion as something to be granted, end quote. Rabbi Buchdahl's decision not to sign the letter is neither the focus of my ire nor this monologue. I frankly don't care much whether this rabbi, my rabbi, or anybody does or does not sign a public letter about this or anything else. Though if you do care, that is certainly your prerogative, and I understand why and where that comes from. I know these kinds of letters are in vogue today. I've signed some myself, not signed others. It's just not something I feel accomplishes all that much, nor warrants that much conversation. And thus, I digress. What I want to talk about is the reaction to Rabbi Buchdahl's decision online, where certain members of the Jewish community have taken a no-holds-barred approach to drag, denounce, and disparage the rabbi in ways I had not thought possible in polite society, and certainly not in polite Jewish society. The shocking displays of indecency I have witnessed fall into an all-too-common modern-day behavior whereby the moment, the instant, a public figure we already do not like for political or identity-based reasons does something publicly that offends those political or identity-based sensibilities, we use that alleged misstep as an excuse to unleash all the disgusting, concealed, identity-based hatred we have for this person under the guise of righteous indignation. This is, as I have categorized such actions before on this show, a total bullshit behavior. Now, before I curse again, and there's going to be some cursing, so if you don't like that, go ahead and skip. Allow me to remove my Rabbi kippah and replace it with the backwards hat of a tell-it-like-it-is street tough. What I have seen online, and I get this all the time personally in my DMs, is not ideological disagreement, despite the vehement protestations to the contrary. Disagreement and disparagement are 2 different things. No public figure of integrity has any issue with respectful disagreement. That might look like, hey, I personally find your argument on this topic to be off the mark. Here is my empirically based counter-argument. I wonder what you think of it. Thank you for your time. That's how you disagree. Hey, idiot, you're irrational, you're a fool, this is dumb, you've been brainwashed, personal insult, personal insult, personal insult is not a disagreement. That's just being a dick. And when the shit being said has actually nothing to do with the topic being addressed, but is instead a free-for-all of, in the case of Rabbi Buchdahl, anti-woman, anti-Asian, anti-liberal, anti-reform Jew hate, you're not just being a dick, you're being a bigot. Watching some of these videos online and, God forbid, reading the comments has been like attending a white Christian nationalist rally in reverse. She's not a real rabbi. Democrats are not real Jews. Surprised she's not wearing a keffiyeh. How did she even get in? She's plotting a left-wing political attack. She can't be trusted. Progressive Jews are the enemy. Reform convert rabbi, what did you expect? Women rabbi, there's your answer. Stop attending reform shuls. She needs to unconvert. She's a capo on the bima. She's a wacko. She's not a real Jew. Those are the comments from a single post. Let's keep going. Here are the comments from just one other post. Why can't it be consensus that women can't be rabbis and anyone who claims they can has never studied Torah? I thought she was Chinese. Atheist reform will let a pagan be their rabbi. They don't care. Did she ever really have a Jewish soul? The reform movement is disgraceful. I don't know who she is, but she's irritating and I don't like her. I don't know any Jews who support this phony sham rabbi. Another video disparaging the rabbi was a clip of her speaking to young trans Jews who might be feeling, quote, frightened and alone, saying she supports, loves, and values them, and they're created in God's image. This clip was reposted under the heading of the rabbi being political. The comments on that one include, she is a jihadist, shut up and sit down, you are an abomination, your eyes are brown, you are full of shit, not a Jew, not a rabbi, honey, no, this isn't Judaism. Do not attach yourself to thousands of years of scripture you cannot understand. LOL, a self-declared rabbi. Leave it to the reform movement to allow this type of infiltration. This woman is not Jewish. People are even giving the rabbi shit for being on a book tour in support of her new memoir, as if rabbis making media appearances in support of the books they have written is somehow unusual or unseemly. I can tell you from my email inbox that every rabbi on the planet wants to make media appearances in support of the books they have written. Folks also accuse Rabbi Buchdahl of being a Mamdani supporter, despite her literally never saying a word in support of him and consistently espousing deep love for Israel and Zionism as a core tenet of her rabbinate for its duration. So we know the accusations here are flatly disingenuous and just an excuse to let the inner asshole flag fly. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that none of these comments actually say anything about Rabbi Buchdahl herself. What they do reveal is the hateful nature of a frenzied mob of arrogant, bigoted Jews foaming at the mouth in their excitement to tear down women, non-whites, liberals, and non-Orthodox Jews. Fears about safety or assimilation or the Jewish future are legitimate concerns we all share. Expressing those fears as abject, bigoted hate in the public square is not legitimate and certainly not something we share. For anybody to talk about anybody this way is disgusting. For Jews to talk about anybody this way is especially disgusting. For Jews to talk about another Jew this way is even more disgusting. For Jews to talk this way about a rabbi, a spiritual Jewish leader, is beyond disgusting. For Jews to talk this way about Rabbi Angela Buchdahl, a rabbi who has blazed a trail as both the first Asian American cantor and head rabbi of a major congregation, and did so as a woman in a male-dominated field, is revolting. For Jews to talk this way about the rabbi who, through online streaming and TV, has more Jews attend her services than any other rabbi on planet Earth, who has created a safe and inclusive home for literally 1 million plus Jews who might otherwise be unengaged, is nothing short of a disgrace and a blight upon the Jewish people. What kind of oblivious asshole do you have to be to talk trash about a Jew who has devoted her life to the benefit of our people while you, troll rabbis on the internet? Do you see how ridiculous that is? Here comes a hard fact that's going to get me into trouble, but I call it like I see it, and this is what I'm seeing. The fact is that I only see this kind of racist, misogynistic, anti-Jew hate spewing forth from the Jews on the right. And I don't say this with any political agenda or because I subscribe to any particular side. This is an observation based entirely on hard evidence and my own experience. I've talked about it on this show and online before. The worst hatred I get on social media, the rudest comments and the roughest treatment is from fellow Jews on the political right. Jews who pray at the golden calf of Donald Trump, who I have credited on numerous occasions for his accomplishments in the Middle East and fighting anti-Jew hate at home, and whom I have also disparaged on numerous occasions for his flouting of decency and democratic norms. Just because in Trump world it is acceptable to rip people to shreds based on their identity does not mean it's acceptable for decent folk to participate in this kind of public flogging. And come on, we're Jews. We're supposed to be better than this. We're humans, so we're not. But damn it, we're supposed to be. And lest you put words into my mouth, no, I am not saying all righty Jews are bigots, just like I wouldn't say all lefty Jews are terrorist supporters. I could care less where you fall politically as long as you're kind about it. But the fact remains that most Jewish bigots are on the right and most Jewish terrorist sympathizers are on the left. A rhombus isn't a square, but a square is a rhombus. What really gets my goat is the hypocrisy of these people. Jews who claim to understand Torah flouting a dozen of its laws and teachings in their sprint to tell other Jews how un-Jewish they are. Which Jewish value is that, We're all made in God's image? Nope. Embarrassing someone publicly is like killing them? Love the stranger? Learn from the mistakes of Babel, Sodom, and the golden calf? Nope, nope, nope. Wrong or misguided ideas I can handle. We should all be able to handle. Being an absolute dickhead for no good reason, that I can't abide. When I see people treating other people like garbage, I remind myself that the root cause is almost always fear. In the words of one of our greatest sages, fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Toda Rabbi, Master Yoda. Very wise you are, I think. As I have said before, in our relatively safe and comfortable world, fear is a terrible motivator for personal action. Unless we are talking about a literal life and death situation in which your nervous system requires a fear response in order to remove you from an acute moment of physical danger, allowing fear into the driver's seat is almost certain to speed you into some kind of regrettable collision, especially when it's a vague, ill-defined sense of fear, the shape of fear, if you will, which is what so many American Jews are experiencing today. Jews are afraid for their general safety, for their ability to move through society without harassment, for our future. I get it. We have been attacked and traumatized and continue to be attacked and traumatized over and over again. The data is real. The hate crimes are real. The concerns are real. I also understand the fear of assimilation. We are shrinking. We are losing people. The data is real. The concerns are real. However, none of that is an excuse to be controlled by fear, the extreme end of which is becoming that which we fear the most. According to a 2020 Pew Research study, Reform Jews make up the single largest group of engaged Jews in America at 37%. If the worry is the preservation of Jewish life, does anyone honestly think telling the single largest group of American Jews that they're not Jewish enough to be in our club the answer? When our numbers are declining and non-traditional Jews show up who actually want to be here, what kind of dipshit strategy is it to shame, blame, and exclude those people from our community? Who wants to be in that kind of family? That's a self-fulfilling prophecy right there. We need all kinds of Jews in this society. If we were all Haredim, we'd have very few Jews integrated in this country's halls of power. We need less observant Jews to be our politicians, our sports team owners, our studio heads, our hospital directors, our lobbyists, etc., etc. If we're all home doing Torah study, who's going to be out there getting their hands dirty and building the relationships we need in the modern world? Likewise, we need the Orthodox community to preserve the sanctity of our people, to maintain our laws and traditions to their highest order, to serve as an example for the rest of us to strive for, and to use their voice and influence and resources as well. It takes all of us. There is no one way to be Jewish. It's a shame that so many Jews themselves seem intent on refusing to recognize that. A house divided against itself cannot stand. We are surrounded by enemies in all kinds of ways, and yet there are Jews out here burning their time and energy cannibalizing other well-meaning members of our own community in public. There is a difference between disagreement and disparagement, between accountability and shaming. The former leave room for discourse and growth. The latter are self-defeating, un-Jewish, indecent, and make you look like an asshole. Be vocal, be assertive, be skeptical. Just don't be a racist, sexist, elitist dick about it. Arrogance, wickedness, mob mentality, and idolatry all still exist today as they did in biblical times, only now we've had millennia to study the playbook on how to avoid them. We have the answers. Whether you choose to embody the highest ideals of that playbook or weaponize it to tear down your own people is up to you. Being a real Jew is not about your politics or observance level. Being a real Jew is just about not being a dick. This is the 46th episode of Being Jewish with me, Jonah Platt.